Hey there, CX leaders. Chris Higgins here, producer of the CX Leader podcast. We interview a vast number of fantastic customer experience professionals, and they have a ton of great advice and stories to share. But sometimes we can't squeeze it all into an episode. So from time to time, we're going to start featuring some of that great content that didn't make it in the final edit as bonus content. This will only be available for those that follow the podcast through their favorite podcast provider. So if your colleagues or friends want to hear all this great stuff, encourage them to follow the show. So in our last episode, Becoming Customer Obsessed, our guest, Marbue Brown, had a great story about a company going above and beyond that didn't make it in the final edit. We thought it was a great story, so we're highlighting it in our bonus release. Enjoy.
One other thing that's been on my mind is obviously you focused in the book on brands that people would recognize, they would be familiar with, which I think is great. It's kind of a great way to just talk about some things that they might be, some of the practices they might be familiar with. But what do you say to kind of the skeptic that says, yeah, that's great. I understand, Chewy and Zappos and all of that, but I work for a manufacturing company, or I work for a technology company, and we have different channels of people that we have to maintain relationships with, and all. I don't know how we can do some of those things to make them obsessed. What you've worked at some of those types of companies. What's your take on that?
Well, let me say that it's really a matter of imagination. Okay. One of the principles that we have in the book is this whole idea of giving customers what they want before they know they need it. And I'll tell you, a lot of times customers don't ask for some of the things they want because they don't actually think anybody would ever give it to them, right? But in these companies that are customer obsessed, they have a knack for using their imagination to go beyond the boundaries that are often considered to be the ones that are essentially untouchable. And because they have been able to do that, they have been able to create these wow experiences for people, regardless of industry. I mean, if you look at the book, it cuts across a lot of different industries. It's got, quick service restaurants. It's got, retail. It's got air travel. It's got a bunch of different things. And even if you look at the customer obsession barometer, we cut across even more industries. But when it gets right down to it, it's about folks having imagination. And, one of the things I did in the book was to outline what I call the principles of wow, right? And the principles of wow have to do with how do you create wow moments for your customers? Like by doing things for them. Like a wow moment happens when a company takes care of something that a customer needs to take care of, but they do it for that customer before the customer does it. Okay. So when you have those types, when you can create those kinds of scenarios for customers, you can always create those wow moments, regardless of what industry you're in, right? And if I may, I'll just throw in this really quick example. It's a Southwest Airlines example. A customer was in a plane on the runway about to take off. They pulled the plane back to the gate and they asked her to get off the plane. Now, it turns out that her son had been in a very bad car accident. She didn't know it. And so when she walked off the plane, they told her about her son's car accident. But here's what else happened. They had already booked her on another plane to the destination where her son was. They had set up for her to sit in a private area so she could wait for that flight. They had packed a lunch for her to be able to eat so that, she would be able to do everything she needed to do to go focus on her son. And then the next day after that, they called her to see how her son was doing. Wow. Okay. They did a bunch of stuff that she would have needed to take care of, but they did it for her before she took care of it. Right. Now, it's a little bit of an extreme example, but that's the kind of thing that creates wow moments. And I would say that any industry people can think of how to create those moments.
No, I think it's a beautiful perspective and a beautiful, very human story. So thanks for sharing.
If you want to hear the full episode, you can always visit cxleaderpodcast.com. And remember, this bonus content is only available in our podcast feed, so be sure to keep following the show. Thanks, everyone.